Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here today. We'll be presenting the 2BSXtra, our certification for the food and feed markets. So before we begin, just some reminders. This presentation is going to be recorded, and we are going to put the replay after on our website, so you can rewatch it afterwards. And if you have any questions, you can send your questions via the Q&A button, and we will have a moment at the end of the session to answer all your questions. Today, Lucy and I will be presenting this webinar. Lucy is our project manager for the sustainability development and bioenergies, and I am the communications and marketing manager of 2BS. Our webinar has three main objectives. First, to help you understand the certification framework. Second, to help you understand the certification process and audit requirements. And finally, to explore the various voluntary options, such as the FCA and equivalence of FCA equivalence, and our new GAG module. So before we start, we would like to kindly ask you to scan this QR code and to fill in a short questionnaire that will help us to get to know you better. Your answers will help us to better orientate what we are going to say. So the first question we would like to ask is if you are a first gathering point, an industrial site, a trader, or an auditor or certification body. If you prefer, you can also enter on slido.com and enter this number that you can see on the screen. So, okay, we have lots of people on industrial side today, some first gathering points, and some auditors/certification bodies. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Our second question for you is what type of materials do you sell? So we put some examples. So corn, wheat, barley, sunflowers, oils. If you can send us some of the materials you sell, no need to go into details of all the materials, but if you can just put some examples so we can understand. Okay, so oil, corn oil, perfect. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much for your answers. So now we are going to go into details of our topic, but first we would like to introduce 2BS for those who don't know 2BS yet. So for those who don't know 2BS, we are an association that was created in 2011 when experts and representatives from the agricultural and biofuels world got together to create a sustainability certification that responded to the regulatory framework, but also that answered to the reality on the ground. We certify the entire chain from the cooperatives and traders to industrial sites. And today we have more than 1,100 certificates, and we are in more than 20 countries. Since we were created, we have continued to work with industry experts to continue offering you certifications and tools that allow you to access new markets while helping you to verify your sustainability initiatives. So our first certification opened the European biofuels and bioliquids market to certified players. But since then, we have been developing new certifications. So, for example, the biogas market also has a sustainability certification for them. And now we have a certification that is dedicated for the food and feed markets. And this is the certification we are going to present you today. So as I was saying, we have now two certifications, the 2BS certification that is recognized by the European Commission within the Renewable Energy Directive framework. And we have the 2BSXtra certification that is applicable to all players that want to promote their virtuous approaches in the food and feed supply chains. Our certificates are valid for 5 years, but annual audits must be organized. And we have the SAI recognition, and we will present that more in details later. So why did we develop this 2BSXtra certification? We know that climate change is driving consumers to choose more environmental friendly products, and this fact affects all the industry in various sectors, including the food and feed industry. And we know that several customers are demanding more sustainable products. So for this reason, the players want to prove their sustainability actions with a certification that will help them to increase the value of their ecological approach. And to meet this demand, 2BS has expanded our certification reach to the new food and feed markets. This will enable you to meet the sustainability needs of your customers with a certification that is easy to implement.
Yes, thank you, Bruna, for this introduction. And hello, everyone. I'm Lucy Davler, as Bruna said. I'm the project manager at 2BS, working on the sustainability development as well as the bioenergies. And now the question we will ask ourselves is, where does this certification come from? So this certification is actually older than some of you might think, because it was born in 2016. The only thing, it was very little known from the market, and during the year 2024, from the request that we had from our stakeholders, we created a completely standalone or independent certification that is separate from our experience in energy with our certification 2BSVS. And this is meant to reach the food and feed sector. And it's also addressed to operators who do not have 2BSVS certification, which was the case before. Thank you, Bruna. So how was this certification developed? 2BSXtra was actually my first project within 2BS, and it was one of the opportunities I had to understand how 2BS works. So we always work in co-construction with actors and representative from the market. So last June, we organized 2 working group meetings with 17 market experts and representative from certification bodies. And after 8 months of work, we were ready to finally launch and update the 2BSXtra certification into a simple and effective certification for the food and feed. Now, how is the 2BSXtra certification built concretely? We have a main procedure or main document, so the procedure 2BSXtra Pro 02. And this procedure details how the certification process works. And to this procedure, we can add different modules. So according to the needs of each economic operator, you can add, for example, the SIE/FSA equivalence, or we have a module called the GHG module. And maybe in the future, we'll have more modules to add to this main document, which is what we tried to show on this slide. And then we have all the documents that are on the top right of this slide. So we have one procedure for the governance, explaining the governance of 2BS. And one document I would want you to take into account is the add-on to 2BSVS with its checklist, which is the document that helps operators who already have a 2BSVS certification get certified with 2BSXtra. So it's easier to get the certification. And for the future developments, we are currently working on our GHG module to update our methodology. So it's not on our site or the document yet, but I will go more into detail later. And we could be adding also new modules such as FAFAC modules, SIE Gold, for example, and opening hopefully to new sectors such as the chemistry and bioplastic sector. And we're also currently working on more claims that could be made with this certification. But since I've said before, we will be updating this certification, but we already have lots of benefits from using this certification. It's a voluntary certification that does not apply, as I said, to the biofuels market and the energy market. It's completely independent from the certification, 2BSVS. And it allows operators to demonstrate the certified sustainable origin of and traceability of materials intended for the food and feed sector, from raw materials to the final product. And as I mentioned before, we have a 2BS Add02 add-on that is a simple add-on to implement for operators who already have a 2BSVS certification. 2BSXtra also benefits from SIE/FSA 3.0 silver equivalents, and we also have an add-on to attribute greenhouse gas emissions to the products. Now we will get more into details about the certification. Firstly, I wanted to speak about the definitions that are linked to our certification. So we took the definitions from a European regulation called 178/2002. And when we refer to human food, we refer to any substances or product, whether processed, partially processed, or unprocessed, intended for or reasonably expected to allow human ingestion. And for animal feed, it's any substance or product, including additives, processed, partially processed, or unprocessed, intended to be used as oral feed for animals. And we also have a certain amount of products that are excluded from human food definition. So it's living animals, the feed, but also like plants before they were harvested, medical treatments, tobacco, etc. So this is mentioned in the regulation. So the 2BSXtra certification covers our entire biomass chain, and it targets different economic operators. We have the first gathering points, which are the facilities that collect, aggregate, and prepare the biomass. Then we have the processing and conversion units, the sites that convert biomass and waste into food and feed. And then we have the traders, which are the entities that legally transfer ownership of certified materials. So depending on who you are in this chain of custody, you will meet the specific requirements of the specific standards. So for the left part of this slide, so the first gathering points, they will always refer to the 2BSXtra procedure and the standard 1, so 2BSXtra STD01 on the bottom of this slide. And for the second part of the chain, so the traders and the intermediate operators, which we call the processing plants, you will follow the requirements of the 2BSXtra standard 02. This is only in the case where you are not an entity that possesses a 2BSVS certification. If you do possess a 2BSVS certification, you will only have to fulfill the requirements of the 2BS add-on, which is called 2BS Add02. And one other important thing to mention is that for the first gathering point only, I will mention this later as well, if you have an entity that has an SIE/FSA 3.0 silver or gold equivalence, or if you are certified under another voluntary scheme recognized by the European Commission, you can also only fulfill the requirements of the 2BS Add02 in order to be 2BSXtra certified. And another point to mention is the traders and the processing units will only receive 2BSXtra certified material. which is also on this slide. Now we move on to more to the part about the documents that has to be transmitted along the supply chain. So we have two documents. So for those of you who know the 2BSVS certification, this time we only have sustainability declarations and self-declarations. As you can see on this scheme, the self-declaration is the first document that appears in the supply chain, and it comes from either the farmer or the points of origin and the intermediate collection point towards the first gathering point, which is the first entity that is certified, just like our 2BSVS certification. And then we have the sustainability declarations, which are transmitted from the first gathering point to the transformation units and the transformation units to the traders. So to assure the traceability, and these 2BSXtra sustainability declarations always make reference to the 2BSXtra certificate and contract numbers, and they accompany each shipment of raw materials and products between those interfaces I mentioned. So now more into details, the self-declaration first. We have two self-declarations documents. So it's a model, if you already know our certification 2BSVS, that you are familiar with, because we've taken the same model and we have adapted it for this certification. So we have one for the farmer and one for the point of origin. And it's completed every year, and it has to be audited by the first gathering point every year. Now for the sustainability declaration, they're a bit different from our 2BSVS sustainability declaration. There's less information because I mentioned before the greenhouse gas emissions that you add to your products is voluntary. So in this document, there's a part that I put in yellow in this slide, which is optional, about mentioning the methodology you've used, if it's our methodology or another one that is allowed. And we also have mention about the chain of custody that is chosen, so mass balance or segregated, which is some of the differences we have with the sustainability declaration you might know. So now sustainability under our 2BSXtra certification is based on the eligibility of raw materials to be part of the supply chain as a raw material and the eligibility of the agricultural land. So we say that the food and feed crops must be sourced from what we call sustainable lands. And so eligible materials under 2BSXtra are agricultural biomass, so virgin biomass and associated industrial products, and also the waste and residues, so organic waste streams of biological origin. So this is an important point of our certification. It's one of the main pillars. So it's the no-go areas, so where the crops cannot come from. So we call it also unsustainable land. So the biomass for the food and feed cannot come from land with high carbon stocks or land with a high biodiversity value. When we say land with high biodiversity value, we talk about forests and other wooded lands rich in biodiversity, primary forest areas designated for the protection of nature, or grasslands rich in biodiversity. And for the land with high carbon reserves, we mention peatlands and wetlands. And now more into detail about one part of the high biodiversity value lands, as I mentioned, the grasslands. So we have two types of grasslands, the natural grasslands and the non-natural grasslands, and they can be differentiated. So the production of food and feed is not allowed, for example, on natural grasslands, which are more than 1 hectare in 2008 and with high biodiversity value. And for non-natural grasslands, so it means there's human intervention somehow, it has to be demonstrated that the collection of the raw materials is has not damaged the condition of the grassland with high biodiversity values. So this has to be checked with the auditors during the audit.
Yes, and as we mentioned, one of our objectives is to facilitate the certification process. That's why we have developed tools to help you validate your sustainable crops. 2BS proposes the 2BS mapping tool, a tool that we have developed and made available in France, and a tool that will be soon available in other European countries. In Latin America, we also have recognized two other tools that are Puma and Ucropit, and that can also be used to help you validate your sustainable land.
Yes. Now we move on to the chain of custody. So we have different options for the 2BSXtra certification. You can either choose to do mass balance or segregation. So the mass balance, it's a tool for tracking chronologically the flows of your different enterprises at each stage of the supply process. As we can see on the scheme, so the certified material and the non-certified material are stocked and kept together in the same place at the level of the first gathering point. And then we move on for the chain. The only thing it is the materials are segregated in the bookkeeping, but they are physically mixed. And then we sell them at the end, and it's a system of virtual credits for this mass balance. And for the segregated model for our standards, we've taken the ISO definition, and it means a chain of custody model in which the specific characteristics of a material or product are kept separate from initial input to final output. So as you can see in the scheme as well, there is a difference between two. They're kept completely separate physically from each other, so the certified and non-certified, along the supply chain. Thank you. We have different benefits from using one or the other. So the mass balance system allows shipments of different materials with different characteristics to be physically mixed in the supply chain. And this therefore allows sustainability characteristics to be flexibly assigned when selling your products, which is a big benefit from using this chain of custody method. And for the system, the segregated system, it relies on three different points. So the physical separation, certified and non-certified materials are processed in different facilities or on separate production lines. And you have to have a full traceability. So every step of the supply chain has to be documented, and you have to have a concrete procedure for this topic. And each batch has to include the appropriate records. And there's also, unless like the mass balance, you cannot allow the mixing of the products. But one benefit from this is even if it's more restrictive than the mass balance system, it ensures a total purity of the certified flow. If the mass balance is chosen, the mass balance at the level of the first gathering point is for a period of 12 months, and it's maintained at the first gathering point level. And for 2BSXtra, when you have a 2BSVS certification, there has to be a separate mass balance for the 2BSXtra food and feed raw materials, separate from the one that is meant for the energy sector. And for the mass balance for the processing plant, it's a 3-month mass balance period. And it's managed in a software system under the control of the group administrator at the head office. And same thing, the processors have to maintain a completely separate mass balance between the 2BSXtra food and feed products and the ones meant for the energy sector. And one important thing is if you have a 2BSVS certification, the credits from your mass balance can be transferred to the 2BSXtra food and feed, but not the other way around.
So now that we have seen all the technical aspects of the certification, how can you get certified? So first, for those who are not certified to be SVS yet, you should first read the documents that are available on our website, contrast with a certification body that is referenced on our website, create all the documentation, so all the audit file that you have to be audit during this process. You can carry out a blank audit if you think it's necessary. And then once the final audit is made, you can obtain the certification and pay the annual fee of 2BS. For those who are already certified 2BS, who have already the 2BS certification, you can simply log in into your customer area via our website and then request a new certificate.
So now when we have a new customer, so completely without a 2BSVS certificate, we ask for different information to be disclosed. So for example, all relevant information, including the mass balance data, the audit reports, and when it is necessary, we have also the information about the participation in other schemes and if the certificates have been suspended in the last 5 years. For our 2BSXtra certificates now, the content of the certificate must be verified, evaluated, and validated during each annual and surveillance audit. It can be modified also after any audit, so surveillance or renewal audit, for example. We have a number of differences with the certificate that you might already know. So, for example, for operators in the food and feed sector, you mentioned on the first page if they are first gathering points or traders or transforming units. So if they respect standard, the requirements of standard 1 or standard 2. And if you have a 2BSVS certification, we mentioned that you are using fulfilling the requirements of the add-on. And in the last page on the annex, we also mentioned the 2BSVS certificate number. And we can also add on the first page all the voluntary add-ons that we will talk about, so the SIE FSA equivalence or the GHG module. And on the last page in the annex, we also mention when there is this equivalence and also if the GHG model is chosen, we mention the GHG methodology used. The certificate validity period is 5 years from the date of the certificate, and it ends 1 day before the 5th anniversary. If there is more than one cycle for the certificate, we can still mention the original date of certification on the certificate. And so the start date is the date on which the certification body has approved and validated the certificate for the current cycle, and it is not the on-site audit date. For specific cases, so if you already have a 2BSVS certification, the initial 2BSXtra audit can be carried out independently. But then we want for the 2BSVS and 2BSXtra audit to be a common audit. So you have to adjust your cycles, adjust the cycles of the two certification, either by modifying the 2BSVS cycle of certification or by adding an additional 2BSXtra audit for them to be carried out at the same time. And one specific element to mention is 2BS has a tolerance in carrying out the annual follow-up audits of plus or minus 2 months, which can help also join these 2 audits. For the certificate statuses, we have 5 statuses, so valid, suspended, withdrawn, terminated, and expired. And it's only with a valid certificate that an economic operator can sell on the market its products. And the 5 defined certification statuses have to always be published on our site. And if there are any updates or changes, they also have to be republished. And for economic operators whose certificates are withdrawn, terminated, or expired, they remain registered on our website for at least 24 months. Now we move on to our last part, which is on the voluntary add-ons. So I will speak about as the SIE FSA 3.0 add-on or equivalence. the GHG module add-on, and the add-on to the 2BSVS, so the 2BS Add 02. And I will start with the SIE FSA 3.0 equivalents. So firstly, what are SIE and FSA? So SIE is an initiative created in 2002 by Nestlé, Danone, and Unilever to support the development and implementation of sustainable agricultural practices. It was a leading initiative for the human food industry when it was created, and it still is today. And it provides us a structured approach to assess and manage different aspects of agricultural practices, which include environmental, social, and economic dimensions. And they have different tools. So SIE has different tools. And one of them, the main one is Farm Sustainability Assessment, so FSA, which is a tool to help farmers assess and improve the sustainability of their operations. So what is FSA based on? This tool is based on a series of 109 questions, and they cover 11 areas related to sustainable development. All of them are mentioned on the right side of this slide. And just to mention some of them, we have, for example, crop protection, waste management, water management, biodiversity, working conditions, etc., etc. And for each question, there are 3 levels. So essential, intermediate, and advanced question. And the more questions a farmer can answer positively, the better his performance will be. And we have the silver level, meaning that we have answered 100% of the essential questions, 75% of the intermediate, and 50% of the advanced question for our 2BSXtra standards. And also 2BSVS standards. So yeah, as I was saying, 2BSVS and 2BSXtra have been positively benchmarked by the SIE against FSA 3.0, and they obtained the silver level. In France, it's done, and Belgium, it's done automatically, but for the other European countries, we have introduced an optional add-on known as the 2BS Add 01 Silver Europe. And this add-on can be implemented at the first gathering point, and it allows raw material producers based in Europe, so excluding France and Belgium, to promote their products as FSA 3.0 silver compliant. There are different benefits from having this FSA 3.0 compliant mention. So claiming this compliance can allow you to have access to international markets. So many companies, particularly those that are working internationally, know FSA 3.0 and the SIE platform. And so this can expand your company to opening to new markets and more international markets. It has also can bring you a positive brand image. So the compliance can strengthen this image as it makes of you or an environmentally and socially responsible player, or at least concerned by all these topics that are now very important for consumers as well. And it can also strengthen the stakeholder collaboration. So with different stakeholders, such as the governments, the NGOs, the customers and other investors that are seeking to promote sustainability in the agricultural sector. So a question that comes up a lot, because both certifications are compared positively to FSA 3.0, which one should I choose? If the raw materials can be used for both biofuel by liquid, so the energy sector and the human, and I mean the food and feed, then you are allowed to choose between 2BS VS and 2BS Extra. So you can choose the one which is most adapted to what you're selling or your supply chain. And if the raw materials are intended only for food and feed consumption, then they must be 2BS Extra certified. Now we move on to the add-on to the 2BSVS certification. So what is the 2BS Add 02? So it's an optional add-on for 2BSVS certified economic operators to claim compliance with the requirements of the 2BSXtra certification and to open to this new market. So we have three main sections in this document, all the criteria for the first gathering points, the criteria for the processors and traders, and the additional criteria for the entire supply chain. We have 3 indicators in the first section, 3 indicators in the second one, and 3 indicators in the last one for the whole supply chain. And then we have 4 indicators that are voluntary. So if you choose to have a segregated chain of custody, or if you choose to add the GHG module. Even though our 2BSXtra certification is separated from our 2BSVS certification, we still have some links. I mentioned this before, but it's just a reminder for the first gathering points that have a 2BSVS certification. They will already fulfill the requirements of 2BS Standard 01, which is for the 2BSVS certification. They will refer to the procedure to 2BSXtra and add the additional 2BS Add 02, which is the add-on to get the 2BSXtra certification. And the same for the processors and traders, but they already fulfill the requirements of the 2BS Standard 02. And yes, I've mentioned before, if you're a first gathering point that is RED 2 certified by another voluntary scheme, you also can benefit from this add-on. And on the left side, we have the document, which is it's published on our site, and we have also the checklist associated to this this document, this standard. And when a 2BSVS economic operator applies for the 2BSXtra certification, the on-site audits are carried out simultaneously. This is to prevent fraud and also to improve the audit effectiveness. Here we have a table for the main differences between our 2 certifications and clarify maybe some doubts that are still remaining. I won't go into details of everything, but you can have, because we will send a slide, you can look at this table afterwards, after the webinar. But we basically remind some elements such as which one is recognized by the European Commission, the requirements for the annual reporting, for example, which is not necessary for the 2BSXtra certification, the acceptance of other certification schemes, the mandatory compliance of GHG emissions, or which is not mandatory for 2BSXtra, it's voluntary, the transfer of positive credits between the mass balances and the transfer of credits for the next mass balance period, and also the possible claims, which you can look at more into details later. And lastly, our 2BSXtra GHG module. So this calculation of the GHG emissions is voluntary under 2BSXtra certification. There's no obligation to submit those GHG emissions. And we have different choice of calculation methods. So first one is the 2BS methodology, which I've mentioned before is under, it's being updated. We have working groups with different experts that will take place soon, and we'll have more details on this soon as well. But we already authorize the use of the ISO norms or the greenhouse gas protocol calculation method. And so economic operators will be free to choose their own calculation method that will be mentioned in Annex 2 of the certificate, but they will they have to be able to justify their choice of calculation methods during the audits. And in case system users have performed, for example, an LCA based on the ISO norms that differs from the 2BS methodology that we are currently developing, the calculated value must be reported separately. So we cannot use one calculation method and compare it with another calculation method. It has to be the same.
Thank you. I know we just shared a lot of information, and now we can answer to some of your questions. For now, we only received one question that comes from Nikolaus. He asked if 2BSXtra is accepted by the ASC feed standard.
No, not currently. I am not aware of this standard, but it's an interesting. I will look it up. Interesting to look at.
Perfect, thank you. So if you have any other questions, you can send them via the Q&R part. Okay, there's another question from Alfonso. Is any third-party certification of the GH calculation method required?
Yes. It's during the same audit, so it functions like if you want to have this GHG module, the economic operator will ask to have this GHG module checked during the 2BSXtra audit. So yes, it has to be checked by a certification body.
Okay, thank you. I think there are no other questions. So thank you very much for your participation. You are going to receive this the document and the replay soon on your email, and it will also be available on our website. And if you have any other questions, we're also available via email. You can contact us. Thank you very much, and talk soon.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.